Enots Engineering, I'm Alan. This week I'm turning some wood in the lathe using an old broom handle and turning it into a Morse taper cleaner. It's the finished part. And what I've done is machined a Morse taper on each end, inserted some felt to make a cleaner. So instead of having to find a piece of rag or put your finger into the Morse taper, this will just go in, turn it round, the felt cleans the taper and pulls out any bits and dirt. You can use any piece of wood. This is about 1 inch diameter and about 8-9 inches long. It's just a piece I had of a broken broom handle. You also need some felt for the cleaning parts, and this particular one has a number 2 Morse taper on this end and a 3 Morse taper on this end, but you can make any taper you'd like. If you want one to fit your milling machine, you could just make a taper the same as a milling machine. So let's go into the workshop and see how we make it. So the first thing we want to do is put the dial indicator in the tool post and fit something with a Morse taper on the end, so I can use the Morse taper to clock up to get my compound slide set to the right angle. I'm just going to put that in the chuck, bring the dial indicator in. This dial indicator, every 10 divisions is a thou. And with the compound slide set at about 1 degree, move the dial indicator along the face just to make sure it's set at the right angle. You can see from there the dial indicator's moved a bit, so I'll just tap it round a bit. For what I'm making today, it's not critical. So that's 1 thou, 2 thou, 3. Lock the compound slide up, take out the centre, and what I'm doing is I'm putting this piece of broomstick in. Let's remove my dial indicator out of the way, and I'm only using my compound slide to turn the angle. So the first thing I want to do is just face this off. Now I'll start to turn the angle. The tool I'm using is a standard high-speed steel tool which I use for metal cutting. So once you're getting near the angle, just get a Morse taper sleeve, just check. What I want to do is get so this end just shows into the end of the Morse taper, so I need to come down a bit more on the top. That's probably about right. You can see it's in here. That's okay. It's just touched the bottom of the slot. Won't go on any further. So that's okay for the length. I'll just blend this in at the top. and with some sandpaper, not emery cloth. Just check it on the, comes into the bottom, that's okay. You'll see it's a bit on the small side, but that's ideal for what I need. So what I want to do now is turn another taper on the other end. This is a number 2 Morse taper. So on the other end I want to put a number 3 Morse taper. When you're making the number 3, I'm using the same angle, the same taper. This is a 2 to 3, inside 2, outside 3, and this sleeve has got a number 3 Morse taper in. So I need, that's fully in there, so all I need to do is blend this bit in here. You can see it's a lot smaller, but that's no problem for what we're making. Blend it in. You see this has got a hole in it. That won't be any problem. Put that on there. It's touched on the bottom of the face and there's some play in there. If for any reason it's too small, all you need to do is just take a bit off the bottom. So what I'm going to do with that is sand that again. Go. This is what we've done so far. Taken a piece of broom handle, machined a taper on this end, which is number 2, and you can see it's loose in the number 2. The other end we've machined a number 3, that's the number 3 inside there. It hits the bottom and is loose. I'll now put this back in the chuck and work on the number 2 Morse taper. I'll finish with my turning tool. This is my tool post spindle. Just lock that in. The tool post spindle is 90 degrees to the surface that I've cut. And in the end I'm putting a 3mm end mill. Now, this should be no problem having this end mill in the chuck. I haven't got a collet that I can put in the spindle. I've fitted an electric drill on the end. Now I want to check that the tool bit is on centre line. That looks about right. What I want to do is machine 3 grooves in this wood. This is a 3mm wide cutter, so I want to go up to a depth of about 4mm. Now to help me get the 3 positions, all I'm going to do is put a block of steel on the bed, turn the chuck jaw around till it touches the steel, and that sets the chuck position. But first I need to mark both ends of the slot. Now I've reset the chuck jaw position with the block of steel. Okay, with this tool post spindle I can move the chuck in and out along the axis, but what I want to do is keep the chuck against the spindle so it's not moving in and out. I'm going to control the depths with my cross slide, and the left and right with my compound slide, cutting at the same taper it's already set to. So I'm just touched the workpiece and I want to go in 4mm, but I'm not going to do that in one go. Take it a millimetre at a time. Turn it in a millimetre. Move the compound slider along. Another millimetre. Move it back. Just go along till he's gone in 4mm. Let's clean the groove. And come out. That's the first groove done. Rotate the chuck to the next chuck jaw. Use the same block to get the position and do the next groove. Rotate the chuck to the third position, do the final groove. Okay, so we've got 3 slots around the outside. It's thrown up a bit of a burr, so I can just use my sandpaper. And if you fold the sandpaper, you can just go along each slot. Just take the sharp edge off, or the edges off. Now on the wood, that's the number 2 Morse taper finished. I'm turning this round now and I'll do the number 3 Morse taper. I'll do it exactly the same way. I'll come in there to there. It doesn't matter about this hole, but I can leave that. Just set the chuck jaw up on the block again for the position, bring the cutter in. As soon as I touch now, zero my cross slide. It's 1mm depth I'm doing there. Each cut I'm taking 1mm off. This is just a small end mill, 4 flute, carbide. It could probably do with a faster speed than this drill can provide me with. Take the edges off. And that's finished. I can just sand that over to make it look nice. You can see on the number 2 Morse it rattles about a little bit. It's better to be smaller. It goes right up to the bottom and I can turn it round. Okay, the next thing you need to do is get yourself some felt. This felt is about 3 or 4mm thick. If you've got thicker felt, you need to make the slots wider. Line up your rule or straight edge. If you've gone 3mm deep, you need 5 or 6mm wide so that the felt, when it goes in the slots, will stick out. Rest it up against the felt. Roll it down the felt, and there's your strips. If you can't find felt, thick felt like this, sometimes you'll find table mats are made of felt. They may be a black colour or dyed a different colour, but they're made of felt and they're not that expensive. If you buy felt like this was about £3 for a square foot, but if you buy some table mats made of felt, you'll probably get 4 or 6 and you'll probably pay the same price. Here's the part we made. All I've done is sand it up. So what we're going to do now is measure the length and cut it to length. We need 3 pieces, 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches. does tend to stretch now when you're cutting across. This is wood glue, but I don't know whether it'll do it. Just put a small amount of glue, take the felt. I think you'll have to experiment with different glues. I've tried PVA, it doesn't work because of the felt. The tweezers definitely help get this in. If it's a little too long, you can squash the felt up. A bit in the middle, a bit at each end. Work along. Wipe off any excess because you don't want any lumps of glue, because this glue I think will dry hard. Just push it right in. So any bits or lumps of glue, just brush them off. Same on the other end. Once you think it's in, just push it home with the tweezers. Let that dry, both ends done. Once the glue's dried, what you do is just trim the edge so it's about 4 or 5 mil above on all the ends. I've squashed this down a bit because I've been using it, and then the part's finished. When you've trimmed the edges off, this is what it's for. You can just turn it into your Morse taper, and that's clean the Morse taper. If you use it on this is a number 3 Morse taper. And the more you use it, this will slowly get flattened down to the same shape as a Morse taper. You don't have to find a piece of rag to push up there, and because there are 3 edges, as you turn it round, you know the 3 edges are in contact, and the other end will go further in if you need it. It's not for the 3. The other end is a number 2 Morse taper, which on my lathe is in the tailstock. The smaller end will go in to the taper on the tailstock. So no more looking around for pieces of rag or something to push up there to clean the tailstock or the headstock.
That's it for today. I hope that was useful, and we'll see you next time on Enots Engineering.